I stood there, motionless, as Nathan tore the tickets to my art show right in front of my eyes. His words echoed in the small, cluttered living room of our modest home. "Nobody's going to buy your drawings, Emily. If you have time for this, get a real job." I felt a lump in my throat, the sting of tears in my eyes. But I swallowed hard, refusing to let them fall. I had dreamt of becoming an illustrator since I was a child, and after years of juggling motherhood and freelance work, I had finally managed to organize my own exhibition. Yet, here I was, watching my dream being literally ripped apart. Nathan's disdain for my work was not new. Ever since we moved in with his parents, my passion for art had become a point of contention. His parents, who never worked a day since their retirement, spent their days criticizing my cooking and scoffing at my illustrations. "You're not a painter. How can drawings make money?" they would sneer. No matter how often I explained that my art was not just a hobby, but a source of income, they refused to understand. I looked at the torn pieces of the ticket on the floor and felt a surge of determination. This was not just about my art. It was about my identity, my dreams, and my worth. I had always supported Nathan in his interests, never once belittling his weekend golf sessions with friends, even though they brought in no income. Why couldn't he extend the same courtesy to me? As Nathan turned away, dismissing the entire incident, I made a silent vow. I would no longer seek his approval. My work had value, and I would prove it to him and everyone else who doubted me. Picking up the torn pieces, I met Nathan's indifferent gaze with newfound resolve. "I am not just your wife or Sophie's mother," I said calmly, yet firmly. "I am an illustrator, and I will make my exhibition a success, with or without your support." Nathan scoffed, but I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. For the first time I had stood up to him. It was the beginning of a new chapter for me, one where I would no longer let his or anyone else's negativity dictate my life. That night, after putting Sophie to bed and ensuring the house was in order, I sat at my desk and began to sketch. The lines flowed from my pen, fueled by a mix of anger, hurt, and a burning desire to succeed. Each stroke was a step towards my independence, a declaration of my worth. This exhibition would be my moment, the turning point where I would finally emerge from the shadows of doubt and disrespect. As I worked into the early hours of the morning, a sense of empowerment enveloped me. I was more than just a part of this family. I was an individual with dreams and capabilities, and I was ready to fight for them. "Another day of scribbling away, Emily?" Nathan's mother, Mrs. Clark, sneered as I prepared breakfast. Her words, laced with sarcasm, were a daily ritual as ingrained in our routine as the morning coffee. "Yes, Mrs. Clark, just like any other day," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I had learned that responding with emotion only fueled their taunts. Nathan sat at the table, scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the tension. His father, Mr. Clark, joined in. "Why bother with all this art nonsense? Real work brings in real money, not these childish drawings." I served breakfast, forcing a smile. "Art is my work, Mr. Clark, and it does pay," I said, more to myself than to them. Their laughter followed me as I retreated to my makeshift studio, a corner in our bedroom. Their words were like barbs, each one a reminder of how little they valued my passion. But I couldn't let them see how much it hurt. I had Sophie to think about, and my art. As I settled into my work, the door burst open. Nathan stood there, his face contorted with anger. "I got a call from Sophie's school. She's falling behind in her studies. What are you doing all day, Emily?" I looked up, surprised by his outburst. "I take care of Sophie, the house, and then I work." "You know my schedule, Nathan." He stepped closer, his voice rising. "You call this work? This is why Sophie is struggling. You're too busy playing artist." His words stung. I had always balanced my responsibilities, ensuring Sophie's needs were met. "I make sure she does her homework, Nathan. I can't do it for her." "Maybe if you spent less time on these stupid drawings and more time being a mother." His words trailed off as he stormed out, leaving a heavy silence in their wake. I sat there, stunned. The accusations were unfair and hurtful. I wasn't just an artist. I was a full-time mother, a housekeeper, and a wife. Yet none of that seemed to matter to Nathan or his parents. That evening, as I tucked Sophie into bed, her innocent voice broke through my turmoil. "Mommy, why does Daddy yell about your drawings? I like them. They're pretty." I kissed her forehead, a lump forming in my throat. Thank you, sweetie. Daddy just doesn't understand, but that's okay. What matters is that we understand each other, right? Sophie nodded, her eyes filled with a trust and love that warmed my heart. It was in that moment, looking at my daughter's innocent face, that I realized I had to make a change. I couldn't let Nathan's ignorance and his parents' disdain shape our lives any longer. I had to stand up for myself and for Sophie. The next morning, I made a decision. I would go through with the exhibition, no matter what they said. I would show them that my art was not just a hobby, but my lifeline, my expression, and my contribution to the world. And maybe, just maybe, I would find a way out of this suffocating environment for Sophie and myself. The day I received the invitation for the solo exhibition was a ray of light in my otherwise dreary routine. I remember staring at the email on my laptop, my heart pounding with excitement and disbelief. This was it, my chance to shine, to prove my worth beyond the confines of these judgmental walls. However, my elation was short-lived. As I shared the news at dinner, hoping for a sliver of support, the reaction was anything but encouraging. A solo exhibition? Who would be interested in that? Nathan scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. His parents chimed in with their own barbs. Don't get your hopes up, dear. These things are often more about who you know than actual talent, Mrs. Clark said, her words sharp as knives. I clenched my jaw, fighting back the hurt. It's a big opportunity for me. People do appreciate my work, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Nathan laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. Appreciate? Emily, let's be realistic. You're a stay-at-home mom who doodles. This isn't a career, it's a pastime at best. The dinner table became my battlefield, each word from Nathan a bullet I dodged or absorbed. I excused myself early, retreating to my studio corner with a heavy heart. Their words echoed in my mind, but I couldn't let them win. Not this time. I worked tirelessly for weeks, often staying up late to complete my pieces for the exhibition. Each brushstroke was a silent rebellion against Nathan's cruel words, a testament to my dedication and talent. One evening, as I put the finishing touches on a painting, Nathan barged into the room. Are you still up doing this? You're neglecting your duties, Emily. The house is a mess, and Sophie's been watching TV for hours. I stood up, my patience finally wearing thin. My art is important, Nathan. It's not just a duty I can neglect, and I've taken care of everything else. Can't you see I'm trying to build something for myself here? He snorted. Build what? A fantasy? You think these paintings will change our lives? Grow up, Emily. You're living in a dream world. I looked at him, the man I had married, now a stranger fueled by contempt. Maybe I am in a dream world, Nathan, but it's better than living in a world where I'm not respected or valued. I will go ahead with this exhibition, with or without your support. Turning my back to him, I continued my work, each brushstroke a declaration of my independence, a step away from his demeaning grasp. As the days passed, my resolve only strengthened. The exhibition was not just about showcasing my art, it was about reclaiming my self-worth and dignity. It was about showing Sophie that dreams are worth fighting for, no matter the opposition. And so, with a mix of fear and excitement, I prepared for the exhibition day, ready to step into the light, leaving the shadows of doubt and disrespect far behind. The day of the exhibition neared, and a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. I knew it was more than just about displaying my art. It was a statement, a challenge against the disdainful environment I had been living in. One evening, as we sat in the dimly lit living room, I mustered the courage to invite Nathan. The exhibition is next week, I began hesitantly. I was wondering if you'd like to come. He didn't look up from the TV. Can't. Got plans with the guys. I felt a familiar sting, but persisted. It's important to me, Nathan. I've put a lot of effort into this. Finally, he turned, his eyes cold. Why do you keep going on about this, Emily? It's just a little show. It's not like it's going to change anything. I held the invitation out to him, a futile gesture of hope. It's not just a little show to me. It's my work, my passion. With a swift, careless motion, Nathan grabbed the invitation and tore it in half. This is what I think of your little hobby, he sneered. The pieces fluttered to the ground, a symbol of my shattered efforts. I stood there, frozen, as he turned back to his show, dismissing my dreams as if they were nothing. Tears blurred my vision as I picked up the remnants of the invitation. His words echoed in my ears, a cruel reminder of the lack of respect I had been enduring. But amidst the hurt and humiliation, a fierce determination took root within me. I was done seeking validation from a man who couldn't see beyond his own ego. I glanced at Sophie, who had witnessed the whole scene from the doorway. Her eyes were wide, filled with confusion and sadness. At that moment, I knew I had to set an example for her. I couldn't let her grow up thinking it was acceptable for her dreams to be trampled upon like this. The next morning, I made a decision. I would leave Nathan, not immediately, but soon. I would plan it carefully, for Sophie's sake and mine. This exhibition would be my stepping stone, a way to prove to myself that I could stand on my own. The days leading up to the exhibition were a blur of preparation and quiet planning. I was a woman on a mission, no longer the timid, acquiescent wife and daughter-in-law. I reached out to friends, seeking support and advice. I opened a separate bank account, a small but significant step towards financial independence. On the day of the exhibition, as I stood among my paintings, surrounded by appreciative onlookers, I felt a sense of accomplishment like never before. My art was being seen, appreciated. It was a validation that Nathan and his parents could never understand. As people inquired about my work, expressing interest and admiration, I felt my confidence soar. Each compliment, each interested glance at my paintings was a vindication of my talent and hard work. I sold my first piece that day, a moment that marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. A chapter where I was no longer just Nathan's wife or Mrs. Clark's daughter-in-law, but Emily, the artist, a woman who had the courage to stand up for herself and her dreams. The success of the exhibition was the turning point. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I knew I couldn't go back to the life I had been living. The disdain and disrespect were suffocating, and for the first time I saw a way out. I waited until Nathan left for work and Sophie was at school. With a heavy heart but a clear mind, I packed a small suitcase with essentials. I took a deep breath as I looked around the room, a mix of relief and sorrow washing over me. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I left a note on the kitchen table, not wanting to confront Nathan or his parents directly. I knew they wouldn't understand, nor did I expect them to. The note was brief. I need some time and space. Sophie and I will be staying with my parents for a while. I picked Sophie up from school that day, her smile a balm to my anxious heart. We're going on a little trip to Grandma and Grandpa's, I told her. She was excited, unaware of the weight of our journey. At my parents' house, I finally felt a sense of peace. They welcomed us with open arms, no questions asked. They saw the tiredness in my eyes and the determination in my posture. You always have a home here, Emily, my mother said, hugging me tightly. In the safety of my childhood home, I explained to Sophie why we were there. Mommy needs some time to work on her paintings, and we need a little break from Daddy, I said gently. Sophie, wise beyond her years, looked up at me with her big eyes. Is it because Daddy doesn't like your drawings? Her question stung, but I nodded. Sometimes people don't understand the things we love, sweetheart, but that doesn't mean we should stop loving them. The days turned into weeks. I spent my time working on new illustrations and planning our future. The quiet and support of my parents' home were a stark contrast to the constant criticism I had faced in Nathan's house. One afternoon, I received a call from Nathan. His voice was a mix of anger and disbelief. Where are you? Why aren't you home? You can't just take Sophie and leave. His words were like daggers, but I stood my ground. Sophie and I are safe. We're with my parents. I needed space, Nathan. Space you never gave me. You're being selfish, Emily. You're tearing this family apart over some paintings. I clenched the phone tightly, my resolve hardening. No, Nathan, you tore this family apart with your disrespect and disdain for what I love. I won't apologize for wanting to be happy, for wanting Sophie to see her mother happy. There was silence on the other end, and then a click. He had hung up. But it didn't matter. I had spoken my truth, something I had been afraid to do for so long. In those weeks at my parents' house, I began to see a future for Sophie and myself, a future where we were free to be who we wanted to be, free from judgment and belittlement. It was a future I was determined to make a reality. The weeks following my departure were a whirlwind. I immersed myself in my work, finding solace in the strokes of my brush. My parents' encouragement was a stark contrast to the environment I had left behind. They believed in me, and that belief was a powerful motivator. My phone buzzed one evening with a call from Nathan. Bracing myself, I answered. His voice was different this time, laced with desperation. "Emily, please come back. The house is a mess, and I can't handle everything on my own." His plea was a strange mix of pitiful and infuriating. "You're calling me back to clean up your mess?" I asked, my voice steady. "It's not just that. Sophie misses her home, doesn't she?" "You're being selfish, keeping her away," he replied, trying to guilt-trip me. I sighed, feeling a surge of pity for the man I once loved. "Sophie is doing fine. She's happy and well cared for. This isn't about her, Nathan. This is about you, not being able to handle the responsibilities you so easily dismissed when I was there." Nathan was silent for a moment. I need you, Emily." "I needed you too. Nathan, I needed your support and respect, but you chose to belittle my dreams and ambitions. I can't come back to that," I said, my voice firm. The call ended with Nathan's empty pleas echoing in my ears. It was clear he had not changed. His request was not for reconciliation, but for convenience. Meanwhile, my art started gaining traction. I received more commissions and even had inquiries from galleries interested in showcasing my work. It was exhilarating and validating. My hard work was paying off, not just in terms of recognition, but also financially. One day, as I was working on a new piece, Sophie came to me with a drawing. "Look, Mommy, I made this for you." Her drawing, a colorful depiction of us holding hands, was a stark reminder of why I had made the decision to leave. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Just like you," I told her, hugging her tightly. My success was a bittersweet reminder of the life I had left behind. Nathan's calls became more infrequent, each one more desperate than the last. He was struggling to manage without me, and while part of me felt vindicated, another part felt sorry for him. But I had made my choice, for Sophie and for myself. I was building a new life, one where my art was not just a hobby, but my identity. A life where I was respected and valued. As the invitations to exhibitions and galleries came in, I realized that this was just the beginning. I had stepped out of Nathan's shadow and into my own light. As my reputation as an artist grew, so did the attention I received. It wasn't long before a local newspaper expressed interest in my story. The idea of sharing my journey was both exhilarating and intimidating, but I knew it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. The day of the interview, I sat in my parents' cozy living room, the reporter's recorder blinking on the coffee table. "Tell us, Emily, what inspired you to pursue art so passionately?" he asked, his pen poised over his notepad. I took a deep breath, collecting my thoughts. Art has always been a part of who I am, but the real push came from needing to prove to myself, and perhaps to others, that my passion was more than just a hobby. It was my voice, my identity. The reporter nodded, scribbling down notes. "And how has your family reacted to your success?" The question was a loaded one. I chose my words carefully. "Let's just say not everyone understood my journey. But I believe in following your dreams, even if it means walking that path alone." The article came out a few days later. "Local artist finds success against all odds," the headline read. It painted me as a sort of underdog hero, a narrative I hadn't expected but appreciated. The response was overwhelming, with people reaching out to express their support and admiration. Among the flurry of positive attention, Nathan's reaction was conspicuously absent. That is, until one day he showed up at my parents' doorstep, unannounced and uninvited. I opened the door to find him standing there, a mix of anger and desperation in his eyes. "You're making a spectacle of our family with these stories," he accused, waving a copy of the newspaper in his hand. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "I shared my story, Nathan. A story of finding my own path. I didn't mention you or anyone else." He scoffed. "But it's obvious, isn't it? You're making me out to be the bad guy." "Am I? Or did you do that all by yourself?" I countered, my patience wearing thin. Nathan's face reddened. "I want you and Sophie back. You belong with me, with your family." I shook my head, a sense of finality settling over me. "No, Nathan, Sophie and I are doing just fine. We're happy and we're free from the negativity and disrespect we faced with you." He looked like he wanted to say more, but I held up my hand. "This is my life now, Nathan. I suggest you find a way to move on with yours." As he stormed off, I felt a sense of closure. I had stood up to him, not with anger, but with the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth. In the weeks that followed, my art continued to flourish. Exhibitions, commissions, and collaborations, my calendar was full. Sophie thrived too, her laughter and creativity a constant source of joy. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. A future I had carved out for myself and my daughter on our terms.